Imagine wasting 10 full years obsessed with a single game just to reach the final boss. Then you realize the journey was merely a trial to prove your worthiness. Suddenly you are forced into that world reincarnated as a savage barbarian. This is the legend of our hero, a once fragile guy who conquered the impossible. Bound to a hospital bed, gaming was his only escape from a soul-crushing reality. Fed up with trash-tier modern releases, he stumbled upon an underground gaming forum. They whispered about Dungeons & Stone, a hardcore RPG demanding absolute 100% mastery. This 2D indie title seemed mid at first, especially since it lacked a translation. But since it was free, he dove in. Character creation offered several classic fantasy races: humans, dwarves, elves, and furry beasts, plus a mysterious slot marked with 3 question marks. He picked the Barbarian on a whim, never expecting to play for more than an hour. The graphics were basic, but within minutes he was totally hooked, losing all sense of time. The mechanics were deep, some classes were overpowered while others were complete garbage. Death meant permanent reset. One mistake, and you start from zero. The stakes were insane. Despite the endless game over screens and mounting frustration, he refused to quit. Through his hospital stay, civil service, and even college, Dungeons & Stone remained his obsession. Jobs came and went, but the grind never stopped, even as he died thousands of times. 9 grueling years later, he finally stood before the gate of the ultimate boss. Reaching the Abyss Gate brought a wave of relief. He was the only player this dedicated. Now a monumental choice remained. Would he dare to cross the final threshold? Selecting yes triggered an ominous warning. There would be no turning back from this path. It felt like the game itself was begging him to stop, but he did not hesitate. He confirmed the choice, his mind racing as the loading screen flickered with anticipation. He braced for the boss, but a system message shattered his reality. Tutorial phase complete. A tutorial, 9 years of blood and sweat, and the game called it a tutorial. As his rage peaked, the text shifted into Korean. He realized his life was being hijacked. Target locked. A blinding light erupted from the monitor, swallowing him whole into the void. Agony flared as he was pulled into the screen, his consciousness slipping into the dark. A booming voice echoed, welcoming the new warriors who had entered the sacred ritual grounds. He awoke to the flicker of torches and the smell of iron and sweat. Towering, muscular barbarians surrounded him. His own body felt heavy and incredibly powerful. His skin was mapped with tattoos and rippling muscle. A massive elder barked orders nearby. Reality hit him hard. He was now the very barbarian he had selected years ago. The elder summoned the warriors. First up was Carrick, the third son of Vannon. Carrick grabbed a twin-headed axe, and the system declared him a true warrior. One by one, the others claimed their steel, while the elder offered a divine blessing. May Raphonia's grace guide your blades. That is when the truth finally sank in. This was not a dream. He was literally trapped inside the world of Dungeons & Stone. He was not just playing a character. He had actually become a living, breathing barbarian. Suddenly a panicked voice whispered, "This cannot be real," from the man beside him. The terrified man blurted out that they were stuck inside a video game. The elder's head snapped toward them. Who dared speak? Was it you, boy? Our hero froze, glaring at the idiot who had just endangered them both. The old warrior stepped closer, his gaze burning with intensity. You said something, did you not? Trembling, the other man asked if they were truly inside the game. With a brutal swing, his head rolled. The elder roared, declaring Orm a vessel for a demon before commanding the savage horde. Purge his blasphemy from your minds. The ritual must proceed without delay. Reality crashed down on our hero. To these people, players like him were nothing more than cursed phantoms. Exposure meant an instant death sentence. One slip-up, and it was game over. Silence was his only shield. As the elder summoned Seneca's fourth son, the tension in the air became suffocating. Anxiety clawed at him as name after name was called. Even worse, fellow outsiders were being dragged into the light. He forged a desperate gamble. If a name hung in the air for 2 seconds, he would seize that identity. Then it echoed through the clearing, Bjorn, son of Jandal. He counted. 1, 2. With no one stepping up, he claimed the name. I am Bjorn, he declared, masking his fear as he walked forward. The elder's piercing gaze felt like daggers. Pick your steel, the old man barked, gesturing toward the armory. Amidst the sharp blades, his choice left the crowd speechless. He did not reach for a sword. He grabbed a shield, the ultimate survival tool. Meanwhile, the game's core systems began to hum with activity. An administrative alert flashed. Subject overall level surged by +24. The higher-ups were now watching. Flashback to his first run, he chose the Barbarian for raw power, initially wielding a massive blade. It looked cool, sure, but he was absolute trash. He spent more time staring at death screens than playing. Even the mobs seemed bored of killing him. Hammers, maces, axes, nothing could stop the constant slaughter. Berserk mode was a death trap. But then he stumbled upon a discarded shield in a quiet corner of town. Suddenly it clicked. Barbarians were not just glass cannons. They were built to be the ultimate meat shields. Mastering the defensive arts was a brutal grind. The learning curve was steep and unforgiving. But once the skills synced, he was a god on the battlefield, crushing elites with zero effort. The barbarian tank build was straight up broken. This was his ticket to the top tier. Ceremony over. The massive gates of the labyrinth groaned open, revealing the abyss beyond. The city of Raftonia swallowed them whole. The horde charged blindly into the dark, fueled by adrenaline. The formation crumbled instantly. Their so-called leader stopped dead, admitting he had no clue where to go. The crowd erupted in fury, stripping him of his rank on the spot. Total chaos. Einar, daughter of Fenelon, stepped up to lead the disorganized pack. Our hero watched from the shadows as Einar hit the same wall. She was lost, and she knew it. Despair clouded her face. He had to help, but drawing attention was a one-way ticket to the grave. Quietly, he nudged her toward a veteran squad. "Follow them," he whispered, masking his brilliance as simple luck. Einar took the hint, announcing she had found the path. The sheep followed their new shepherd. The entrance loomed before them. Doubt began to fester. Was entering this death trap truly his best move? His past life was spent rotting in a hospital bed. He was not a warrior. He was a survivor. Could he really slay monsters? Regardless, the brutal taxes of dungeon and stone would not pay themselves. Turn 20, and the government comes for their cut. Pay up, or they will put you in the ground. It was either the dungeon or scraping by as a tavern rat. For a barbarian, options were thin. Society saw him as a brainless wrecking ball. That is just how the game was rigged. The perk, free gear, the catch. It was a literal ticking time bomb. With only 10 minutes until the portal sealed for a month, he stood at the edge of destiny. Suddenly, Einar lunged for his hand, dragging him toward the closing rift. "Go on," he urged her. "I will be right behind you," he promised. She paused, offering a genuine word of thanks. She admired his sharp mind. A smart barbarian was a unicorn in this world, and she was hooked. He sighed internally. To get on his level, she would need a total character reset first. "Just try to act normal," he joked, shielding her from the harsh truth of their kind's low intelligence. With a beam of hope, she promised a massive reward if they both survived the trial ahead. A reward. His mind raced. Could this be the start of an epic romance in this hellscape? Yet those words haunted him. "If you return alive." In this brutal world, barbarians thrived on the edge of death. Mortality meant nothing to them. Eyeing her, our main character asks, "Are you actually afraid of dying?" Einar pauses, then scoffs. Isn't it obvious? She's terrified, yet her soul is forged in the fires of war. Without the hunger for battle, you aren't a true barbarian. That single truth finally clicks in her mind. The labyrinth calls, and she must answer. As a barbarian, she's mastered the art of weaponizing her own fear. She plunges into the abyss. Inside, the visibility is zero. But when it comes to dungeons and stones, our boy is a literal god-tier veteran. He expects glowing crystals to guide his path through the gloom. Instead, he's engulfed by a pitch-black void. This nightmare scenario was never part of the original game. With 9 years of pro experience, he creeps forward, tracing the cold walls while cursing his agonizingly slow pace. Snap. A bear trap bites into his flesh. He swallows a scream, knowing a single sound could invite disaster. His instincts were spot on. A twisted, sinister shadow lurks nearby. Worse yet, these little monsters are incredibly cunning. They only strike when you're bleeding out. Swallowing the pain, he refuses to let a single whimper escape. He roars instead, baiting the goblin into the light, standing defiantly despite his mangled, numb leg. Trapped and bleeding, his fury ignites. He spits curses until the sound of approaching footsteps confirms the bait worked. Our boy fakes a retreat, skillfully luring the creature into a deadly game of cat and mouse. It moves when he moves. It stops when he stops. Seeing this, he pivots to a riskier gambit. He drops like a stone, playing dead to bait the beast. The goblin hesitates, watching for any sign of life. It begins pelting him with rocks, testing his corpse. Rage boils over. This monster is smarter than most players. It's more calculating than the barbarians who died here. As it creeps closer, our boy makes a fatal slip. His strike misses. The goblin actually cackles, mocking his pathetic failure. Now, our protagonist's blood is absolutely boiling. Driven by pure, unadulterated rage, he lunges, pulverizing the creature with a flurry of visceral, instinctive strikes. This is the barbarian way, raw, untamed insanity. With the monster dead, the level-up notification finally flashes. The corpse evaporates, leaving a tiny crystal, the world's hard currency. This Tier 9 magical gem is worth about 1 loaf of bread. It's official, he's trapped in a brutal world of monsters and loot. Every landscape and race matches the game he mastered for 9 years. This is his new terrifying reality. The only way out might be through the grave. Leaving a crimson trail, he drags his broken body forward. He crawls for miles, his vision fading. Just as despair takes hold, a faint glimmer appears at the tunnel's end. A group of adventurers passes by. Our boy is at death's door, clinging to a measly 2% health. Bjorn tries to call out, but his throat is parched. The strangers wonder how a newbie survived this deep. It feels impossible. Irritated by their stares, Bjorn wants to lash out. The group's leader keeps a cool head, ordering a girl named Rosina to heal him. She flat out refuses. The leader doesn't even blink, asking another member for a potion instead. The healer grumbles about wasting mana, but finally hands it over. The liquid hits Bjorn's mangled foot, and the flesh begins to knit together with unnatural, terrifying speed. Agony rips through him, forcing a guttural scream, but seconds later, his leg is perfectly healed. He stands, knowing this mercy has a price. They demand answers. How did a level 1 reach this hellhole? Bjorn keeps it real. He just woke up here. Palladino sighs, noting this fluke only happens once a century. Talk about trash tier luck. After getting their answers, the group decides not to charge him for the meds. In this labyrinth, time is more valuable than gold. Bjorn finds their sudden generosity a bit suspicious. Why invest in a random barbarian? Still, he's just glad to be breathing for another day. The party heads back toward the blood trail. Meanwhile, the merchant comments on the barbarian's insane luck. The blonde warrior agrees. Surviving those early trials is a feat most ordinary players could never achieve. The woman notes the redhead's hesitation with the potions, while the leader played the hero instead. The vendor doesn't deny it, pointing out the priest's reluctance too. The air thickens with unspoken tension. Words turn sharp as they begin to debate the true nature of that barbarian's survival. The archer watches the shadows, wondering if this was truly luck, or something far more ominous. The party treks onward, finally halting before the glowing gateway to the labyrinth's second floor. Pure joy washes over them, but as they approach, the woman's scream pierces the air. Stop. She spots a discarded barbarian saddle nearby. Quickly, the elder conjures light magic to banish the shadows. A fresh trail of crimson stains, the path horrifying everyone. How far did that savage actually crawl? Roughly 10 miles, the blonde warrior estimates. A terrifying realization hits. He dragged himself here alone. His physical prowess must be inhuman. Shivering, the red-haired fighter wonders if he'd survive such agony. He remembers the barbarian thrusting out a magic gem. The warrior actually dragged his broken body here. Facing death, he refused to abandon his leverage while clinging to life with pure, unyielding desperation. Instantly, the red-haired man retracts his insults, turning to the party with a heavy question. Does anyone remember his name? They'd always viewed barbarians as nothing more than mindless, bloodthirsty animals. But this man is different. Meanwhile, our protagonist is busy duking it out with a goblin horde. He pulverizes them with just his shield, and Knuckles decoding their movements while dodging lethal traps. Ambushed from the rear, he spins crushing skulls with his shield. Yet a deadlier enemy emerges: starvation. His ration bag ripped during the chaos, leaving him with only 2 measly scraps of bread. Forcing himself to ration, he savors a tiny bite. It's heavenly, but a scorching thirst soon follows. Where do you find water in this hellhole? In the game, hydration was never a survival mechanic. In this brutal reality, survival is a different beast. Gritting his teeth, Bjorn pushes forward anyway. He scours the shadows until the faint trickle of water echoes. There, a figure hunched over a spring. The stranger vanishes the moment Bjorn nears. Settling in, he counts his loot: 40 precious crystals. Then exhaustion hits like a truck. In this dungeon, there are only 2 ways to sleep. Option 1, flop down and pray to God. Option 2 is much more effective. Find a reliable partner. But to Bjorn's shock, every single person in the vicinity rejects him. He's absolutely livid, but before he can lose it, a mysterious voice calls from the gloom. It's a guy named Han, sporting a wide grin. Hey, you really looking for a bunkmate? Han pitches it as a simple deal. We watch each other's backs while the other snoozes. Bjorn introduces himself, but Han takes his hand with a vibe that feels way too intimate. A trio would be safer, Han mumbles, blushing. Is it really just the 2 of us? Bro, this dude's energy is beyond sus. Bjorn wants to cave his face in, but holds back. He needs the security. One high-stakes game of rock, paper, scissors later, Han wins the first nap. Bjorn is fuming over his rotten luck. Han just tosses him a device. Check it, he says. Wake me when the hand hits this mark. Then Han's out cold. Bjorn sits there, mind racing. Should he share that sleeping bag? He prays no goblins ambush them before his shift ends. Han wakes up grateful and tells Bjorn to get some shut-eye. But sleep isn't happening. Trusting a stranger is suicide. Bjorn fakes a heavy snore, waiting for the inevitable betrayal. He turns his back, playing the perfect victim. But 2 hours pass in total silence. Back on watch duty, Bjorn hasn't slept a wink. His grip on sanity is starting to fray. Why hasn't Han moved? Maybe he's actually legit. Guilt creeps in, and Bjorn finally drifts off. He snaps awake with a jolt, screaming. They lock eyes in a tense, awkward silence. I blacked out, Bjorn mutters. Han just scoffs. Wipe your drool first, tough guy. Lucky we weren't gutted. Bjorn offers a rare apology, telling Han he can sleep more. Nah, get some real rest, Han beams. I've got you. Bjorn actually feels a spark of gratitude. Han's creepy smile never wavers. Bjorn treats it like a business deal, ignoring the weird vibes. Pure kindness doesn't exist in Dungeon and Stone. Our boy knows something here is seriously wrong. Bjorn's eyes snap open. Han is standing over him, a massive hammer poised above his skull. Want to sleep forever. If Bjorn hadn't lunged aside, his head would be a crimson pancake. He pivots instantly, dodging the strike. Han can't believe his eyes. He's just poked a sleeping bear. Bjorn unleashes pure, unadulterated rage. He ignores the man's desperate, pathetic screams for mercy. A brutal shield bash shatters the man's skull. Han grovels in the dirt, stuttering out hollow excuses. To Bjorn, this traitor is just another high HP monster. One hit won't cut it, so he swings again. The guy crawls away, weeping apologies. Bjorn towers over him, demanding the cold, hard truth. Han confesses he planned to knock Bjorn out and strip his gear for a massive payday. Is that it? Bjorn's voice is cold enough to freeze the room. Han begs for freedom, but Bjorn isn't buying the act. He gives him one final chance to confess. Trembling, the man admits the real prize he wanted: Bjorn's heart. Our boy is stunned by the cruelty. Apparently, barbarian hearts are premium ingredients for magical artifacts. Absolute insanity. To this man, Bjorn was just a gold-tier goblin, a walking loot box waiting to be opened. Why now, though? Bjorn wonders why the snake didn't strike while he was dreaming. Turns out even backstabbers need a nap. I told you everything, so we're good now, right? Bjorn realizes the world is full of vultures. If he lets one go, 100 more will follow. He raises his shield. In this brutal reality, he just claimed his first human life. One day in, and he's already a killer. He loots the corpse, equipping new shoulder pads. He adds a backpack to his loadout, boosting his inventory space as his power level climbs. He grabs the hammer and boots. Bjorn is now fully decked out in his friend's high-tier gear. Seriously, Han was such a homie. Let's have a moment of silence for his generous contribution. Thanks to Han's donation, Bjorn finally has medicine and a watch. Life is looking up. He's now a walking demolition crew, turning goblins into green paste with that massive warhammer. Day 2 brings crowds of monsters, but the real enemy is the crushing weight of exhaustion. He slumps against a wall, desperate for a wink of sleep. That's when the scavengers move in. Bjorn's eyes snap open. Can't I get 10 minutes of peace? He is absolutely livid. He pulverizes the ambushers instantly. Finally time for a nap, he mutters, but fate has other plans. A hidden blade pierces his chest. Bjorn roars, yeeting the goblin across the room like a rag doll. Another goblin sees his buddy flying at Mach speed and decides today isn't a good day to die. So much for a peaceful wake-up call. Now he's forced to chug stinging potions to close the gash. These potions hurt more than the knife, he grumbles. It's been 14 hours since Han's death. He needs a new lookout. Surprisingly, everyone wants a piece of the cleaner-looking barbarian now. The invitations are non-stop. Every party wants him as their tank, but Bjorn has a different plan. He shuts them all down. He's going back to his roots and seeking out his own barbarian kin. Deep in the dungeon, he spots an elf girl huddled in the shadows. She looks absolutely terrified. Are you hurt? He asks. She flinches, her survival instincts screaming at her to run. He notices her wounds and wonders if humans did this. As he approaches, she drops to her knees. She's sobbing, begging for forgiveness. Bjorn is totally lost. Why is she acting so subservient? She just wants to. This isn't how elves act. Usually they're cold and arrogant, not broken and pleading like this. Bjorn softens his voice and smiles. Relax, little elf. I'm not here to end you. She can't believe it. She knows he's a barbarian, a warrior known for brutality. Is he actually merciful? Bjorn's patience wears thin. Why are you so scared? He tosses her some healing supplies. These are sacred healing leaves, a sign of respect, usually reserved for ancient battle companions. Do I need a reason to save you? He growls. Just patch yourself up. Of course, he has an ulterior motive. He needs a reliable guard for the night. Besides, that wound is gruesome. He's never seen an injury quite that big, if you know what I mean. Her striking looks are a curse, making a safe camping partner way harder to find. Names are swapped, and we meet Erwin the elf. Bjorn's curious. Why is she trembling? She blames the ancient blood feud. She's an elf, he's a barbarian, predator and prey. This lure's a total curveball from the game. Realizing her mistake, she quickly backtracks. That war ended 10 years ago, and she's got no beef. She just hates fighting. Bjorn thought he held all the cheat codes, but this world is throwing serious glitches. The game's logic is crumbling, leaving him venturing into the unknown. Doubt begins growing. He plays it cool, but honestly, he just needs a reliable partner for the night. Both are running on empty. She pauses, weighing the risk against her total exhaustion. Barbarians live by a code. She demands he swear on his warrior's pride to behave. His temper flares at the insult, but he agrees once she promises to honor it. He vows on his father's name, which he's forgotten, and she echoes the sacred oath. The treaty is signed for the night. Bjorn claims the first shift for some sleep. Feeling secure, she agrees. He hands over a watch, a small piece of trust. Don't break it, it's pricey, he warns. He fakes a snore, planning to stay alert. 10 minutes turns into a total blackout. He jolts awake, realizing he actually passed out. 2 hours have vanished. He blames the cozy gear for his unexpected trip to dreamland. Guilt kicks in, so he offers the gear. She drifts off instantly, clearly just as drained. It feels like weeks, but only 3 days have passed since he arrived here. A chilling thought strikes him what's happening to his physical body in the real world. Last he knew he was sucked into a monitor. Checking the watch, his head spins. 10 minutes until his partner wakes. He's torn as keeping her around. A pro move. Should they split the loot? The game's getting sweaty, throwing goblin squads at him now. He can solo 4 goblins, but sleep is the real boss. Can he trust her? Sharing loot sucks, but soloing without rest is a death sentence. He's at a crossroads. Morning brings trouble as 2 humans approach whispering about a prize they've finally tracked. That's her, one mutters. A blonde guy steps up, sizing Bjorn up with greed. He asks about their connection. Bjorn claims her as his partner, but Blondie gets nosy. Bjorn loses his cool, telling the creep to get lost. The cowards scramble in terror. They're hunting Erwin. Realizing the danger, he tries waking her, but she's playing dead. She pulls the blanket tight, but that's the giveaway. It was loose a second ago. The jig is up. She's definitely faking it. He catches her red-handed in her lie. He hoists her up like a toddler demanding the truth. Why play the sleeping act? She admits she was scared he'd ditch her once the sun rose and contracts expired. Her eyes opening meant the end of her safety. Without him, she's just prey. He grills her about the creeps. She insists there's zero history, but he's skeptical. They knew her face. She confesses they're from the clan that previously hunted her. The Crystal Union mark changes everything. Tying himself to her is a massive risk. She's only 20 and clearly in over her head. Bjorn can't just leave her. Walk and talk, he commands. He needs the full story before committing to this mission. Erwin lights up, recounting how she met a man who offered her protection. Something felt wrong. She caught him hovering over her with his hands in a position. He told her to sleep, but she later discovered he was a high-ranking manager. She barely escaped his clutches, but now his goons are tracking her abdomen wound. How are they still on her tail? She suspects they're using a magical message stone. A message stone serves as a magical tracking tether, enabling seamless communication between users. It functions like a mystical walkie-talkie within 300 meters. Bjorn knows abandoning her means certain capture. Despite the danger, she seems innocent of any real crime. Curiosity piqued, he finally asks her, "Why are they so obsessed with hunting you down? Is it a cover-up?" She shakes her head. Blushing hard, she confesses that during her initial escape, a stray knife throw went horribly wrong. The blade hit a vital spot. Whispers suggest the damage was so severe the consequences became irreversible. Not even top-tier potions could mend the wound. No wonder they're thirsty for her blood. Erwin offers a timid apology. Suddenly, her elven instincts flare, and she warns Bjorn, "Don't look back." Pursuers are closing in from 150 meters. Bjorn is floored by her god-tier elven perception. They need to floor it. He checks on her wounds, and she claims she's totally fine. In reality, her stitches are ripping open, yet she grits her teeth as they accelerate into the shadows. The gap isn't widening. The hunters are relentless. Bjorn's gears start turning as Erwin watches his focused gaze. She asks what's up, but he counters with a blunt question. "What are your actual skills?" With total confidence, she reveals her expertise in laundry and keeping a spotless household. Tactical hope deleted. Frustrated, Bjorn clarifies he's talking about violence, not chores. Finally, she mentions archery and spiritual fire magic. Bjorn realizes she's packing an incredibly rare elemental affinity. But there's one crucial question left. Has she ever taken a life before? She says no, but her resolve is firm. If blood must spill, she's ready to pull the trigger. He proposes a temporary alliance until they exit this maze. Of course, the loot must be split. A classic 90-10 split. She agrees instantly as the enemy closes to within 100 meters. Strategy shift. Bjorn takes a sharp detour and orders Erwin to manifest her blazing fire spirit. She obeys without question. Ironically, Bjorn never expected to return to this specific landmark. It's his original spawn point. Before nostalgia can set in, Erwin snaps him back to reality. The hunters are breathing down their necks. Bjorn suddenly commands her to extinguish the spirit's light. Absolute darkness swallows them whole. Bjorn realizes these pursuers are using high-level tracking spells to hunt. A tracker stops exactly at their location. Stealth is over. Bjorn whispers a command to the elf. "Take the shot." She draws her bow with lethal grace, her gaze turning ice-cold and razor-focused. The arrow flies true, piercing the tracker's skull with terrifying precision. A heavy realization hits her. Her first kill. Bjorn nods in approval. Hesitation would have meant their certain deaths. They loot the corpse as a message stone crackles to life. The broadcast reaches multiple units nearby. A direct command echoes, all units converge on the Goblin District immediately. The situation is escalating. Their stalker was a man named Siren. Bjorn scavenges 2 daggers and a pouch of magic crystals. He finds a potion on the belt, while Erwin quickly disguises herself in Siren's gear. Much better, Bjorn notes. She shows him the stone's interface, just one click to transmit. Static bursts. Siren is dark. I repeat, Siren has been eliminated while tracking the target. The elf and the hammer-wielding barbarian are marked. Bounty 10,000 gold coins. The hunt is on. Erwin's jaw drops, but Bjorn is unfazed. Summon your spirit again, he commands calmly. The path is set. They're plunging into the abyss to reach the dungeon's second floor. Sir, Erwin asks tentatively. Are we actually going to attempt the second floor? He confirms. She swallows hard, reminding him that the difficulty spike is no joke. Don't sweat it. We're a perfect duo. Bjorn reassures her with total confidence. She blushes. A frontline tank and a long-range DPS. That's a meta-tier team composition. But doubt still lingers. Suddenly, a chilling announcement blares across the entire district. Capture the elf alive, and she's yours to keep plus 10,000 gold. Hearing that dark price, she chooses the second floor instantly. Lead the way, Bjorn. He hated the idea of her following out of pure terror, but at least it spared him the long-winded explanation. For him, playing the hero was second nature, especially if it meant crushing some low-life villains along the way. As they hiked, she questioned if he actually knew the path. Honestly, he was totally winging it. North was the play. He knew the layout like the back of his hand thanks to countless hours gaming. Suddenly, Erwin signaled a halt. A goblin trap lay hidden ahead, and she was already on it. Right on cue, the goblins launched a backstab. Too bad for them, she was already locked and loaded. She danced around the first attacker, piercing its skull with an arrow. The second beast charged in blindly, but she was a blur of motion circling behind the creature and putting it down instantly. This girl was a beast. Grinning Bjorn hyped her up, asking how she pulled off those moves. Impressive work. A beaming Erwin handed over the magic crystals, honoring their 9-to-1 split agreement. She cheered, realizing she might finally save enough to buy her little brother a decent gift. Bjorn felt a bit awkward, but gave her a thumbs up. Hustle hard, kid. Suddenly, the message stone flared. The bounty was now 20,000 gold, dead or alive. The stakes just peaked. Bjorn promised the shadows would hide them, but before they could breathe, a new nightmare emerged. A pack of ghouls blocked their path. She looked to him, waiting for the order to strike. This time, they'd tag team. In Dungeon & Stone, first-time kills on a species meant massive bonus rewards. More variety meant faster leveling. This wasn't just a fight. It was a golden grinding opportunity. Bjorn charged, shattering the front line while she sniped the flankers with lethal precision. Having a cracked teammate made this whole survival thing feel like child's play. They plowed through the ghouls, trekking north, until day 3 of their brutal journey finally dawned. Then they hit a blood trail. One look told him this wasn't some green goblin ichor. But whose was it? A severed foot and a discarded sandal painted a grim picture nearby. This was the exact spot where his journey began. The gateway to the second floor was right behind them. Memories of his near-death experience flooded back, fueling a surge of pure rage. He buried his hammer into the dirt, venting his rage. Erwin flinched, terrified she'd messed up. She thought she'd failed him, but Bjorn was just seething at his own legendary bad luck. If he'd just started a few yards away, he'd have reached the second floor ages ago. The elf was on the verge of tears, blaming herself. He quickly told her to chill out. He promised it wasn't her fault. As the truth clicked, she finally felt for the hell he'd been through. Bjorn was stunned by her intuition, but her next comment left him completely speechless. She assumed his friends were in heaven. He was lost. Regardless, the portal finally beckoned them forward. Stepping through, a notification flashed, "Welcome to the Goblin Forest." Floor 2 was officially live. The shift was instant. They plummeted from the sky, hitting the dirt in the northern sector. He scanned the woods. Nothing living within 50 meters. They were safe for now. Erwin was puzzled by the forest's existence, so Bjorn started dropping some lore. The first floor had 4 gates, north to the forest and east to the beast slay zone. West led to the land of the dead, while south opened to the Black Rocky Mountains. They'd landed in the safest spot. He then asked if she knew the way back home. Basically, he needed the exit strategy. She explained the dungeon's automatic extraction system. On the first floor, you're out after 168 hours, period. Floor 2 gives you 240 hours before you're warped straight to the city. He planned their move they'd exit when the first floor closed to ghost the gang chasing them. For now, it was time to scout. They stayed close to the portal and started moving. Erwin took point, her sharp eyes picking out every hidden trap along the overgrown path. Bjorn saw nothing but debris, at least until he tossed a rock and saw the chaos. After exposing a concealed trap, she looked up seeking approval. Bjorn gave a stoic nod. "You did your job." A quick reconnaissance confirmed the coast was clear of greenskins, allowing them to push deeper into the unknown. Level 2's difficulty spiked. Goblins prowled in lethal squads of 12, often reinforced by terrifying mutant variants. Warrior and archer types posed a massive threat. Still, Bjorn ordered they dismantle traps and widen their search radius. They hugged the portal, keeping a retreat route open while executing their strategy with surgical precision. Suddenly, Erwin's senses tingled. 50 meters out, a mob of over 10 goblins lurked in the shadows. Bjorn questioned her stealth limits. Alone, she reckoned she could creep within 30 meters before being spotted. Fair enough. The thought of Bjorn sneaking through bushes was hilarious. He was basically a walking tank. But the elf, she moved like a whisper. Spotting the target, she signaled Bjorn to get ready. Knocking an arrow, she let fly, a devastating shot that vanished into the gloom before Bjorn could track it. Without flinching, he marched toward the green monsters, ordering her to hold the rear. A realization hit him. Facing an army of enemies, yet not a single spark of fear remained. Instead, his body hummed with primal instinct, his warrior's heart thumping with a desperate hunger for combat. With a thunderous swing, his hammer pulverized a goblin, nearly launching the creature into orbit. Adrenaline surged through his veins. Shield raised, he delivered another bone-shattering blow. Danger flared. A goblin blade whistled past his cheek. A millisecond's hesitation would have meant certain death. His head stayed on barely. But the goblins weren't about to give him a single second to recover. Solo, he might have struggled to survive. But this time, he had backup. Our favorite elf rained down cover fire, letting him dominate the front lines. The first wave fell. 11 magic crystals secured. A massive upgrade from the first floor's measly 40 crystals per day. This haul was serious gains. Feeling generous, Bjorn handed her 2 crystals instead of the usual one. He pocketed the valuable warrior crystal for himself before they ventured further into the dungeon. Once they pushed 3 kilometers out, goblin mobs began swarming them every 5 minutes like clockwork. Stealth archers joined the fray, and the chaos escalated. The goblins initiated a full-scale assault. Absolute mayhem broke loose. Bjorn held firm, but he was now right in the archer's crosshairs. A projectile whistled toward his skull, but he dodged. Now he had the archer's position dead to rights. After 15 hours of non-stop carnage, they finally rested. Bjorn let Erwin take the first sleep shift. She promptly unrolled her borrowed sleeping bag, setting her gear aside for a moment of peace. She drifted off, likely feeling secure with him standing guard after their 15-hour marathon hunt. The loot was piling up. As they pushed boundaries, they crossed paths with other adventuring parties. Squads of 3 or more appeared, some being exotic species hailing from entirely different realms. They passed in silence, but Bjorn wasn't thrilled. To him, greedy explorers were deadlier than any monster. Caution was key. Day 4 was a bloodbath followed by a much-needed rest on the 5th. More encounters followed on Day 6. Then came Day 7, the final deadline to escape this labyrinth alive. With the first floor closing in 2 hours and 47 minutes, Bjorn moved them toward the portal. The elf sensed fresh traps the goblins were adapting. Plus, a new squad lurked 70 meters away. Bjorn didn't hesitate. They'd fight. 8 standard goblins stood between them and the exit. Reinforced by 2 archers and warriors, the dozen-strong group met Bjorn, who charged like a human bulldozer. He demolished the warriors while Erwin sniped the archers. Bjorn's strikes were noticeably more explosive now. Combat experience was paying off. Even Erwin had leveled up her instincts, guiding her every arrow. She was perfectly in sync with our boy. Curiously, despite identifying 2 archers, no arrows targeted her. Bjorn offered praise but needed clarity had she actually neutralized both of those snipers. He couldn't afford to get shot in the back. She stayed silent, pondering the outcome. Doubt remained regarding the second archer's death. Ironically, this uncertainty was a blessing. False info is deadlier than any monster. Her extreme caution actually made him feel quite proud. Her eyes widened as a shimmering loot dropped from the slain goblin archer. It was unmistakable, the fabled essence. Bjorn froze his mind, racing through lore he'd researched. This wasn't just loot. It was an ultra-rare drop. Online forums called these the holy grail of the skill system, granting users both a passive and an active ability. Attributes were RNG-based, but with limited slots for absorption, every choice was a life-altering gamble. You couldn't just waste a slot. Despite the near-zero drop rate, Bjorn felt a heavy wave of frustration hit. He never expected his luck to peak like this. Beside him, the elf tilted her head in pure curiosity. She wondered if consuming it meant turning into a green monster. Bjorn quickly shut that theory down. It only grants monster traits. He recalled a player who gained a wolf's tracking scent after devouring its essence. That guy could smell enemies miles away. But since Bjorn already had his eyes on a superior target, he decided to let Erwin take this one. Snatching up mid-tier essences was a recipe for late-game disaster. He forced her to agree to a pact first, a heavy conversation he'd been putting off since the first floor. Suddenly, a hostile squad surrounded them, weapons drawn. Their leader stepped forward, his voice dripping with arrogance and ice. "Explain yourselves," he barked. Erwin started to stutter an excuse, but Bjorn's survival instincts instantly flared up. He shut her up and did the unthinkable. He grabbed her and literally hurled her straight into the glowing essence. Upon impact, the core fused with her soul. The rival leader watched in absolute shock as their prize vanished. Livid, he screamed that they'd just stolen his property. As Erwin landed, Bjorn stood tall, his eyes burning with defiance. He gripped his hammer, daring anyone to step up and get crushed. Faced with his raw killing intent, they balked. The cowards bolted toward the portal. He'd successfully repelled the threat, but a grim realization began to sink in. They were likely retreating to the city to report them. A future confrontation was now almost unavoidable. That's a headache for later. Suddenly, Erwin gasped, sensing a fresh horde of goblins closing in from the mist. They were 50 meters out. Bjorn hoped to slip away quietly, but fate had other much bloodier plans. The monsters smelled blood. In a heartbeat, Bjorn pivoted, ordering a dead sprint in the opposite direction. Erwin nodded, but a whistling sound cut through the air. A deadly arrow streaked right for her eyes. Bjorn yanked her back just in time, but as the arrow landed, his blood ran cold. This wasn't goblin craft. It was a human bolt, the same rats who had supposedly fled toward the portal. They'd pulled the aggro and circled back. Those snakes were using the goblins as a distraction for their ambush. Trapped between monsters and murderers, he commanded Erwin to unleash her new power. The time for talk was over. She was lost, so Bjorn barked that her essence was her ultimate weapon now. That goblin archer essence just leveled her up massively. She now possessed game-changing passive and active traits. Her passive poison arrow added lethal rot to every shot. Her active, the legendary thief steps. Total invisibility on command. Bjorn marveled at how instinctively she could trigger the stealth without a second's delay. He tossed her the gear. He'd tank the horde alone, while she hunted the human sniper hiding in shadows. Her protests were silenced by his stern gaze. "Hide and wait," he commanded. "Only fire on my signal." Bjorn roared and charged the front line. He moved like a blur, crashing into the goblins with unstoppable force. He was a whirlwind of steel, parrying and striking in one fluid motion against the overwhelming green tide. A split-second opening allowed a goblin to slash his back. His reflexes kicked into overdrive. He crushed the attacker's skull instantly, but without Erwin's cover fire, the mounting pressure was becoming unbearable. Blood loss and exhaustion took their toll. Suddenly, he sensed two lethal projectiles whistling toward his vital spots. One was a crude arrow, the other a high-velocity bolt. He couldn't dodge both. It was time for a sacrifice. He chose to deflect the lethal bolt, letting the goblin's toxic arrow pierce deep into his elbow instead. His arm went numb as the poison spread. Forced to drop a weapon, he gripped his shield tight. A shield was his best bet. Defense and offense combined against both monsters and those treacherous human rats. Pure berserker rage erupted from him. Terrified by his murderous aura, the goblins broke rank and fled. He let them run. His real prey was still lurking. Then the human archer emerged with a slow, mocking clap. "Impressive solo work," the man sneered. Bjorn narrowed his eyes, recognizing the snake from before. He'd seen it coming, but trash-talking, the elf snapped something inside. Pure rage erupted as he dared them to fight. He was baiting them into a bloodbath, but the cowards tried to blackmail him instead of throwing hands. They knew he was a beast, but pointed at his bloody wounds, offering a deal: walk away alive. "Just snitch on the elf." Bjorn's only response, a chilling smirk that made them call him insane. Who laughs at death's door? Their leader didn't like it, barking at his squad to keep guards up. "Treat this like a raid against a high-rank boss," he said, especially with Bjorn's one arm hanging dead. Time to send a message even these lowlifes would understand. Without a second thought, Bjorn charged the boss. He slammed his shield forward. Panicked, the leader screamed for help as an old samurai swung a blade. Bjorn retaliated with everything he had, but the numbers were against him. Had Erwin handled the sniper yet? Suddenly, a high-velocity arrow whistled through the air. Nobody saw where it came from or who fired it. One thing was certain: that bolt was locked onto Bjorn and the leader. The squad's tank reacted instantly. He roared for the others to bury the barbarian while he focused on swatting the incoming projectiles. While he played defense, the other two pincered Bjorn. The leader crashed against his shield from the front. With the samurai closing in, Bjorn made a brutal call. He used his broken arm as meat shield bait. That sacrifice opened a window for a skull-crushing blow. The leader staggered back, calling Bjorn a literal monster. Seizing the moment, Bjorn pivoted to dodge the samurai's follow-up, sliding back to reset the distance. The battlefield shifted again. Another arrow streaked in, and once more the tank managed to deflect the hit. But this one was draped in hellfire. The inferno forced the tank to drop his shield, leaving him vulnerable. A second later, the leader caught a bolt in the shoulder. Realizing things were getting hairy, he fled. He swore he'd hunt the elf later. Meanwhile, the old samurai went full tryhard, amping up his speed. Demanding a surrender, he pressed on, but Bjorn found his flow, using his shield to mask a strike. He launched a shield bash at the samurai, who barely evaded, only for the attack to plow the tank. The man went flying, coughing up blood. The samurai was livid, baffled that such a powerhouse was here. The noise died down as they traded blows. Now it was finally a fair one-on-one duel to the death. Bjorn yeeted his shield at the man's face, then lunged forward, grabbing his collar in a primal fury. He sank his teeth into the man's neck. As the dust settled, Bjorn stood tall over his dead opponents. Erwin sprinted over in a panic. She begged him to chug a potion, her eyes full of genuine fear. The liquid hit his system like fire. Suddenly, his blood felt like it was hitting the boiling point. His veins throbbed and his skin crawled. Through the haze, Erwin's voice kept him grounded, cheering him on. Bjorn's only thought was the clock. She told him 10 minutes had evaporated since he downed the potion, 40 minutes until the exit vanished. Without blinking, he looked at her and told her to get undressed. Pure shock hit Erwin, but she rationalized that the barbarian always had some weird high IQ plan. Just as she started stripping, Bjorn clarified. He wasn't talking about her clothes, he meant the enemies. Dying of cringe, she quickly shifted gears to salvage the fallen gear before time ran out. She ignored the worthless rags and focused on the high-tier loot. Not a second to waste on junk. Snagging a crossbow, they hauled as fast as possible, with only 26 minutes left on the clock. With 8 minutes left, the portal shimmered into view. The countdown hit the final 50-second mark. They dove through the rift. Bjorn took a hard L, face-planting into the dirt on the other side. Erwin stuck the landing gracefully. As Bjorn groaned, she was practically glowing with pure hype. That was literally so much fun, she cheered, beaming at him. She thanked him for the carry. He nodded, and she brought up the essence condition secret. It was finally time to talk shop, but this wasn't the place. They agreed to spill the tea once they were safely out of there. With 8 seconds left, Bjorn scrambled to remember their meetup spot. The tavern's name was slipping away. His brain was firing on all cylinders, feeling like it might explode. Only 4 seconds remained. Blackwell, he blurted out. The labyrinth gates slammed shut just as the notification pinged his vision. Rafdonia's gates welcomed him home. The journey was over. Our boy had finally returned. He wasn't the only survivor. A huge crowd escaped the abyss. No matter how long you spend in that maze, you always exit at high noon the next day. As he adjusted to the light, a booming voice called out. It was Carrick, followed quickly by Senec. Within seconds, a wall of muscle began to surround him. Bjorn stared in disbelief. Where were all these behemoths hiding before? The street was suddenly crawling with barbarians. They were nowhere to be found when things got lethal inside. Soon, the rowdy pack headed toward the exchange shop. It was time to cash in and settle bets on who hauled the most loot. Naturally, they dragged Bjorn into the wager. The clerk announced a staggering 41,498 crystals for the group, leaving everyone jaw-dropped. Then it was Bjorn's turn. Even he was stunned as the woman's hands moved like a blur, tallying his spoils. The final count. A massive 182,413 crystals. The crowd went absolutely feral with excitement. They hoisted him up, chanting his name like a god. A legendary record had just been shattered. Hours later, while wandering with the tribe, Bjorn caught a glimpse of a familiar face, his favorite elf girl. She was laughing with her kin glowing with pure joy. Suddenly, a sharp pang of jealousy hit him hard. Why was she surrounded by all those guys? Meanwhile, he was stuck in a total sausage fest of muscular warriors. She spotted him and gave a tiny wave. He signaled for a secret midnight meeting, which she confirmed with a subtle nod, but the vibe shifted when another elf asked if she actually knew that rugged barbarian standing there. Caught off guard, Erwin acted like she had never met him. A massive barbarian nearby noticed the exchange and glared at Bjorn. Were you actually checking out that elf? Bjorn played it cool and denied it, but the warrior's face twisted with pure disgust and hostility. He snarled that no true warrior would ever associate with those cowardly, pointy-eared weaklings. The insult hit home, and an elf nearby looked ready for war. Bjorn realized the situation was about to explode. It was a standoff between raw brawn and elven elegance. Luckily, the deadly tension slowly began to fade away. Walking deeper into the city, he saw tearful reunions and families embracing. The atmosphere was thick with relief, yet many never returned. It was a cold, hard dose of reality that no video game could ever replicate. But for the survivors, the party was on. Barbarians were slamming back mugs of ale like there was no tomorrow. Even the women were double-fisting drinks. Bjorn watched the chaos, wondering how he ended up in this rowdy mess. He only joined them to pick up some survival tips, but all they were doing was drowning in booze. Fed up with the drinking, he stood up and announced his exit. The bar went dead silent. Every single barbarian turned their gaze toward him as he prepared to leave. They asked why he was bailing so soon, but ultimately they cheered him on as their greatest champion. Finally, alone, the peace of the city felt surreal. Seeing different races living together was a refreshing change. He checked into an inn and hit the bath, realizing life in this city might actually be worth living. Freshly cleaned, the giant collapsed onto the bed in just his boxers, his massive legs hanging off the edge. The moment he closed his eyes, flashes of his past life flooded back. He was exhausted down to his soul. He woke up at 9:18 p.m. He'd been out cold for 5 hours since leaving the hellish dungeon. He asked about the local tavern only to find out the old place was long gone. The previous owner lost everything in a gamble a decade ago, forcing a total rebrand of the establishment. The new name was Python, the exact place he was currently standing. The game world had clearly evolved. Stepping inside, the roar of the crowd hit him. It looked normal until he spotted Erwin waving him over. She wasn't alone. A very grumpy-looking elf was sitting right beside her, staring him down with judgment. "Are you that barbarian?" she spat. Bjorn kept his cool and corrected her. He introduced himself and learned she was Teresia Erwin's older sister. Suddenly, she stood up, radiating pure fury. She demanded to know why he'd summon a young girl to a tavern at such a scandalous hour. Worse yet, he had the nerve to be late. She straight up called him a shameless scumbag. Stunned, Bjorn played dumb, but Teresia wasn't buying the act. Panicking, he looked to Erwin for some help. Bjorn questioned their timeline post-dungeon. Erwin shrugged, casually dropping the bomb. About 30 hours. Reality crashed down. His grogginess wasn't from a quick nap, it was something much deeper. He'd been out cold for 30 hours. Meanwhile, Erwin stayed quiet, just watching his reaction closely. Bjorn blurted an apology, blaming his massive slumber. The words left Teresia looking absolutely shell-shocked. A barbarian apologizing. Unheard of. She confessed that her expectations for him had been rock bottom. Since she hadn't said sorry in 7 years, she pushed past it to demand answers. "What's your deal with Erwin?" she pressed. Bjorn coldly fired back, claiming he owed her 0 explanations. He wasn't spilling. That defiance sparked her rage, and their verbal sparring match immediately ignited. Suddenly, Teresia slammed a heavy sack down, declaring it held 350,000 crystals. This was the price for the essence Erwin used. She then cut a sharp look his way. Why wasn't he grabbing the loot? Sensing a trap, she accused him of hiding a secret agenda. Ignoring the noise, Bjorn asked if Erwin agreed with her sister before exposing the actual deal. He needed Erwin's help until his essence surfaced. The sudden request caught Erwin completely off guard. "Is that so?" she mused. To seal the bond, Bjorn sweetened the pot with a fresh offer. A 50-50 loot split. The news sent a wave of pure excitement crashing through her. Then, the hype vanished. Looking guilty, she confessed she'd already committed to another team. She joined her sister's squad. Teresia vowed that Erwin would never partner with him again. Their past team-up was just a ritual fluke. Bjorn predictably felt his blood start to boil. Skipping the drama, she shoved the crystals toward him, demanding he take the payout. Bjorn countered instantly. 350,000, that's barely half of what's actually owed. She nodded, but Bjorn did the math. 280,000 crystals were still missing. Their deal was a 90-10 split. Chuckling, Teresia claimed that detail nearly slipped her mind. She casually produced the remaining 280,000 crystals and piled them on the table. She really tried to play him. Now, the ancient barbarian elf blood feud made perfect sense. Payout secured, he dismissed her to talk privately with Erwin. Her sister stood there totally baffled. Before she could protest, Erwin grabbed her hand, thanked her, and practically ushered her out. Erwin offered a final goodbye. Seeing this, Teresia felt a surge of pride. The girl was finally maturing. Stopping at the door, she turned to Bjorn with a sharp demand. Swear an oath. He had to vow never to sleep with Erwin. Only then would she walk away. Erwin turned scarlet. Bjorn blinked, wondering was sleeping the only thing she was worried about. Were other activities okay? Regardless, Teresia kept pointing, demanding he take the vow. Since he didn't give a damn, Bjorn swore the oath. Finally, she made her exit. On her way out, she thanked him for saving Erwin, leaving the young elf glowing red. Bjorn didn't flinch. With her sister gone, a nervous Erwin asked if she'd been out of line. Refusing her sister was a first. Bjorn just gave her a nod, ensuring her it was cool. She appreciated his offer, but confessed she'd ultimately decided to team up with her sister instead. "I hope you aren't mad," she apologized. Bjorn didn't hesitate. "It's fine," he replied. She handed over 63,000 crystals, clarifying it was his portion of the remaining loot. This came from the crossbowman and the redhead. She'd already deducted her own fair cut. She'd left 2 packs at her place and told him to drop by tomorrow to retrieve them. He needed to check the contents. It hit him, then she always knew exactly what he needed. She was the perfect partner. Losing someone this reliable was going to leave a massive hole. "How can I repay you?" she asked. She was dead serious about settling her life debt. Her sister's overprotectiveness finally made sense. Bjorn racked his brain but came up empty-handed. He asked if she was hungry. She declined, so he casually decided to order for himself. Suddenly, she blushed, struck by a legendary idea, her first post-dungeon drink. She wanted to share this deep elven tradition with him. She assumed he'd already had his, but Bjorn stopped her cold. "What do you mean? This is my first time too." Her jaw dropped. "Wait, what? This wasn't a prank. Believe it or not, this was his maiden voyage into a dungeon." Finally, their feast arrived. Erwin hyped him up for his cracked performance inside the crawl, and he threw the compliment right back. They clinked mugs in a celebratory toast. Before long, their banter drifted into totally random, low-key topics, like how she was rocking a skirt while he repped a basic tee. He kept slamming back one mug after another, pressuring her to keep up. Suddenly, he dropped a bomb. He'd figured out exactly how she could pay him back. Intrigued, she asked, "What's the move?" with a hint of sass. But instead of spilling the tea, he insisted they bounce to a new spot. Otherwise, the guards would be all over them. He blushed, acting low-key sus, and asked if they could do it in his room. A bit later, he was completely gassed, drenched in sweat. She was gasping for air too, eyes watering as she screamed, "I can't take any more." She knew this barbarian was a scoundrel. But plot twist, our boy was just giving her a brutal chiropractic session. Since he couldn't nerf his own strength, he nearly ripped her arm straight out of the socket. Sobbing, she cried out that she'd hit her absolute limit. Once it was over, she realized how close he'd come to actually snapping her bones. But in reality, All he was doing was testing her physical limits. Furious, she snapped, "Wait a minute. Did you seriously drag me here just for a flexibility check?" Without missing a beat, Bjorn confirmed that was the plan. He had to verify her stats manually since skill usage was banned in the city. Disappointed, she let out a heavy sigh as he started geeking out over game mechanics and complex theories. Finally, she dragged him back to the real world, complaining that she was totally beat. Just as expected, they crashed together, but it was strictly for sleep. So much for that legendary barbarian honor. The next morning, Bjorn flexed the loot he'd secured from the depths. She asked if he was flipping everything for cash. Since she needed gear, Bjorn let her snag the leather armor and belt, noting the cost would come straight out of her cut. After that, they hit the streets to liquidate their haul. Bjorn bagged a cool 1.4 million crystals while Erwin was shook to find she'd made 50,000. Bjorn admitted he'd never seen bread like this when he started out. Then he brought up the idea of splitting up, which totally killed Erwin's vibe. She begged for one last walk to the central square, where a massive crowd had gathered. Curious, Erwin asked what the hype was about. Glancing at a soldier, Bjorn went cold. It was a public execution. A man sat bound at the guillotine, gagged and helpless. He explained these people weren't even hardened criminals. Their only sin was failing to pay their taxes. A witch's curse was slowly suffocating the entire city, and resources only came from the labyrinth. Those who refused the dive were executed to cut down on useless mouths. As the blade fell, the crowd swarmed the stage, dipping bread in the fresh blood to eat it. Erwin was absolutely repulsed. Bjorn explained the myth drinking an executed man's blood was supposed to bring massive wealth. He noted that fees were skyrocketing every year, which meant he had to level up and get stronger fast. Reality set in. If he couldn't escape this world or become a god, he'd end up on that guillotine too. To dodge that gruesome fate, he had to conquer at least the 6th floor of the labyrinth. With survival on his mind, Bjorn headed for the library. In the game, this place was always under construction, but now it was a finished masterpiece. He stepped inside, feeling the weight of everyone's judgmental stares. Then he spotted Einar face planted on a book, sleeping and drooling like a total goof. Bjorn tried to wake her. In her daze, she gave him a sleepy smile. But the second she fully woke up, she let out a thunderous greeting, annoying every other visitor in the room. Bjorn hissed at her to pipe down, wondering what she was even doing there. Einar was actually taking his think first advice to heart and decided to grind for some knowledge, hoping to be more than just another meathead barbarian. She realized monsters weren't the only threat out there, but man studying was kicking her butt. Standing up, Einar mentioned she was heading to the sanctuary to learn the basics from the elders. Before bouncing, she reminded Bjorn that she always paid her debts. "Find me at the Brave Bull Inn if you need a blade," she offered. Bjorn thanked her, hoping she'd stay true to her word, because he had a feeling he'd need her sooner than later. Bjorn sat down, wondering how to find his target. Scanning the room, he spotted someone slumped over a table, fast asleep. Approaching quietly, he let out a soft cough, stirring the librarian from her deep slumber. She blinked, scanning him before asking his business. As Bjorn opened his mouth to name a book, she silenced him with a dismissive wave. An incantation slipped from her lips. Bjorn stiffened, braced for an arcane strike, yet the world around him remained eerily still. The librarian simply gestured for him to wander. "Keep walking," she teased, "and your answers will find you before you even speak." She was out like a light again. But as he paced the aisles, the logic behind her sorcery slowly clicked. Suddenly tomes, tied to his inner thoughts, pulsed with a faint glow. Intrigued, he snatched one and delved into its pages. Legend said, a witch's curse rendered these lands uninhabitable. Only a single bastion remained standing against the rot, the mighty fortress, Raftonia. To avert total annihilation, the crown forged a desperate gateway into a hidden parallel dimension. This lifeline against starvation was dubbed the Labyrinth. To Bjorn, the lore felt unsettlingly familiar, almost like reading the game's intro. Another text detailed mystical shards capable of manifesting into vital sustenance like bread and water. A true survivalist's dream. While the third book chronicled the bloody elf-barbarian wars, it was the fourth volume that truly gripped his focus. It whispered of malevolent entities from beyond spirits that hijacked human vessels to spread chaos. Though the cause remained a mystery, the royals had spent generations struggling to sever this dark connection. Bjorn smirked. As long as he kept his secrets guarded, no soul could pin a crime on him. The fifth tome recounted a king's passing, claiming he'd perished 150 years prior. Strange, because in the game that death was recent. Another book explored the precarious instability of shifting dimensions. Bjorn's mind flashed to that blonde stranger. He surely knew these texts. The pages proposed a wild theory. Entering a collapsing portal might shatter its very foundation. As he digested these revelations, a chill crept up his spine. A wave of dread washed over him. Sated with knowledge, he exited the silence of the library and retreated to his inn. Staring at the ceiling, he calculated the labyrinth's next opening. One thing was certain: he couldn't survive the crawl alone. A sharp knock jolted him awake at dawn. Expecting Erwin, he swung the door open only to be blasted by a sudden surge of magic. Instantly, Erwin erupted in cheers. After 10 grueling attempts, she had finally locked down a successful spirit contract. Clutching spirit stones, she showcased a swirling ethereal presence, undoubtedly a temperamental wind spirit. She claimed it synergized perfectly with fire magic. Bjorn nodded, impressed by her luck. Forging a bond with spirit stones was notoriously difficult. Success rates hovered at a mere 10%, and the cost was astronomical. Release the spell, he commanded flatly. She pouted, her excitement dampened, as she had more to show. But from where Bjorn stood, the show was already over. She'd already wrecked half his room. Noticing the chaos, Erwin turned bright red and started stammering apologies. She frantically promised a full cleanup. Eventually, Bjorn offered a rare compliment on her contract, softening his edge just a bit. Still, he warned her to quit fooling around and respect her time. Erwin nodded, though her heart sank at his stoic reaction. She'd hoped for a bit more hype for her new spirit. Bjorn sensed a growing shift in her. She was becoming increasingly clingy. Maybe it was just the first companion effect. To him, she was just a comrade in arms, nothing more, nothing less. He mentioned his plan to linger in town, inviting her to seek him out if she ever needed help. Upon hearing this, Erwin turned beet red and beamed, clearly taking his offer in a way he hadn't quite intended. Later, Bjorn headed toward the rowdy inn, where the barbarians gathered. He hadn't even entered before a massive warrior spotted him. The sheer volume of the place nearly blew his eardrums. A hulking barbarian swaggered over with a grin. Crashing here tonight, the man boomed, bragging about the bargain price of 300 crystals. Seeing the warriors sleeping in a literal dog pile, Bjorn passed. "I'm just here for Einar," he replied, keeping it professional. Right on cue, Einar stepped into the hallway. Catching his gaze, she looked genuinely surprised. "What brings you here?" she barked. Bjorn didn't hesitate. "I need a favor. Spar with me." He could have hit the public training grounds where warriors were already clashing, but he needed a specific kind of intensity. He wanted her. Remembering the debt she owed him, Einar nodded. "Anytime, anywhere. Let's dance." "Then let's go now," Bjorn countered. They squared up, tension crackling as the match finally roared to life. Bjorn lunged, fueled by pure grit. But with a blur of steel, Einar's blade met him, ending the duel in a heartbeat. She peered down, checking his pulse, but Bjorn just gritted his teeth and demanded a rematch. Her strength was the real deal. They clashed repeatedly until Bjorn collapsed, gasping for air. Even the mighty Einar was starting to feel the burn. During the breather, Bjorn finally cut to the chase. "Are you heading back into the labyrinth?" Einar locked in. Being totally broke meant she couldn't recruit her own squad. Hearing the offer, Bjorn seized the moment, inviting her along. She hesitated when he demanded 80% of the total loot, but he'd bankroll the entire journey. Bjorn braced for a rejection, worried he'd pushed his luck too far. Instead, she firmly grasped his hand. In her mind, there was zero point in overanalyzing the situation. Logic wasn't her strong suit, so she chose pure trust. By sunrise, Bjorn and his fierce new ally reached the barbarian sanctuary. The elder smugly asked if they were there to master the alphabet. Bjorn demanded the immortal seal, the literal key to surviving the labyrinth's deadliest levels. The elder explained the world's hierarchy. Elves forge spirit contracts to wield absolute mystic power. Dwarves carry the blessing of steel, buffing their gear to god-tier levels with ancient craftsmanship. Demi-humans link with primal beasts while barbarians command spiritual seals. So, since his age made such expertise suspicious, Bjorn quickly spun a clever explanation. He claimed he'd mastered the lore from ancient texts regarding the bloody elven wars. The elder roared with laughter, clapping Bjorn's shoulder and granting the request instantly. The price tag hit 800,000 crystals, but Bjorn accepted without blinking. Expecting high costs, he offered 500,000 crystals plus 3 rare specialty coins. The old man's eyes narrowed, questioning how a rookie had secured such a massive fortune. Anticipating the suspicion, Bjorn claimed he'd stumbled upon a dying elf on the first floor. He bragged about extorting the elf's sister for every penny, a ruthless, convincing lie. A wave of barbarian laughter erupted as the tribe celebrated Bjorn's savage business sense. Impressed by his grit, the elder tossed him 2 extra coins as a legendary bonus. Hyped by the easy profit, Bjorn vowed to keep terrorizing elves for more loot. He understood the seal was a permanent buff, allowing his body to fuse with essences. Barbarians tattooed their children to keep their pure soul's path visible during growth. Before beginning, the wizard warned him that this soul-binding process was strictly irreversible. This specific essence was built for a tank. Needle in hand, the wizard prepared to strike. The needle bit into Bjorn's back repeatedly, each strike feeling like white-hot lightning. Agony surged through his nerves until the first level of the seal finally ignited. His regeneration skyrocketed alongside 13 physical points. He offered the wizard a rare thanks. Nursing a sore back, Bjorn exited the hut, leaving the stunned wizard chuckling behind him. He wondered if he'd been too polite as he headed into town for gear. He'd finally realized his true talent lay behind a heavy shield, not a blade. The vendor offered standard barbarian gear, but nothing matched Bjorn's specific combat vibes. Then he spotted it, a massive mace that boosted his item level by 85. After securing custom-heavy armor, Bjorn settled into a strict daily labyrinth routine. Mornings meant breakfast with Erwin, while afternoons were spent grinding intel at the library. Even when the food was mid, the rumors he gathered were worth the price. He sparred with fellow barbarians, letting his raw survival instincts sharpen into deadly skills. He dominated the training pits, consistently defeating Einar while dropping pro-combat tips. After a final meal together, Erwin wished him luck for tomorrow's dangerous dive. With his attributes peaking, Bjorn prepared as the sun rose on the labyrinth's opening. Bjorn and Einar requested unity magic, placing their hands upon a glowing crystal core. The Brotherhood tax cost 15,000 crystals. In this world, nothing is ever free. This ritual ensured they'd enter the abyss together rather than being scattered. Higher ranks would cost a fortune, and the magic only lasted 24 hours. Earlier, Einar had stood frozen before a table overflowing with the city's finest delicacies. Bjorn had ordered the peak dishes, making the warrior woman nearly cry from joy. That legendary feast fueled her determination to crush everything within the upcoming labyrinth. Minutes before the portal's birth, they stood ready amidst the deafening crowd noise. A group of rookies, fresh from their coming-of-age trials, huddled together in fear. Einar watched them with a nostalgic gaze, remembering her own first step into fate. The portal finally groaned open, but Bjorn held Einar back with a calculated look. He was testing a theory. Einar stayed loyal. Even as the final minute ticked down, panic flared as the rift began to shrink, the surrounding crowd screaming in desperation. Waiting until the absolute last second, the duo finally bolted toward the closing rift. They plunged into the dark region, where Bjorn immediately sparked a torch to lead. She spotted a massive monument. Exactly as Bjorn predicted, this ancient stone held the power to transport them instantly, straight to the second floor. The moment he touched it, blinding light erupted as a shimmering portal manifested. Einar, still reeling from the sudden turn of events, watched wide-eyed as Bjorn prepared to dive through. Activating the first portal granted him 2 experience points, triggering an immediate level up. His essence capacity surged. Mystified, Einar demanded to know how he'd skipped straight to the next level. He claimed he'd simply read about it. If true, they had officially entered the eerie land of the dead. Bjorn checked if she felt anything off. Einar admitted a strange sensation was currently flooding her entire body. She figured it was just her spirit status, calibrating to the new environment. Bjorn realized it was exactly like a game's leveling system. As your level climbs, your core stats naturally skyrocket. His mana capacity had also expanded. This was vital for unleashing special skills and, more importantly, it determined his essence absorption limit. Einar found it sus that he leveled up without slaying a single mob. Turns out, undead monsters usually drop pathetic amounts of EXP, but being the first to unlock a portal grants a massive experience boost and elite leveling hack. Bjorn wasn't sharing this secret. He strictly ordered Einar to keep their rapid progress completely classified. Reaching the second floor this fast was unheard of. If pro-explorers spotted them, they'd be interrogated immediately. Staying away from the main portal was their only safe bet. Mounting the torch to his helmet for a hands-free view, Bjorn noted the flame's magical properties. It gave off no heat and never flickered out. This dead zone held far deadlier threats than any goblin forest. However, the lack of traps made it a barbarian's paradise. Suddenly, Einar's instincts screamed something was coming. A pack of ghouls appeared. Instead of dread, a wild surge of battle-ready adrenaline hit her. Without a pause, she blitzed forward, shredding them instantly. The victory felt almost too easy until a blood-curdling shriek pierced the air. Fear finally gripped her. Bjorn kept his cool, identifying it as a banshee and warning her to stay away. The ghost was neutral unless provoked. Still shaking, Einar asked if this thing was truly dangerous. Bjorn warned that attacking would trigger a lethal curse. Plus, the banshee would haunt them to the labyrinth's exit. That thought sent a chill down her spine. When another scream rang out, Einar reflexively dove for Bjorn's neck. Moments later, skeletons crawled from the earth. Bjorn tried to explain their critical weaknesses, but Einar wasn't listening. She obliterated the entire group in a blur of pure violence. They trekked north for 8 grueling hours, crushing ghouls and armed skeletons along the path. The fights were manageable, allowing Bjorn to sharpen his skills while smashing skulls with his heavy mace. His new gear tanked hits effortlessly, and his helmet proved it was for more than just holding candles. It deflected arrows with ease. Watching Einar, he realized she was a natural-born killer. One detail stood out. She constantly roared Valhalla, the barbarian goddess's name, though even she didn't know why. Soon, Bjorn found himself shouting right along with her, getting swept up in the glorious chaos of combat. The endless grinding stacked his EXP high. Einar eventually noticed Bjorn's arm was sliced open. He didn't blink. To her shock, The flesh began knitting back together. Was it the seal's power? Bjorn confirmed the first seal level drastically boosted his regeneration and overall stamina. As the terrain warped, the banshee's wails reached a deafening crescendo. This was rank 8 territory. Suddenly, a bone-chilling roar erupted as a death demon manifested. This beast supposedly devoured the labyrinth's light. Bjorn yelled that the head was the only target. They charged instantly, but the demon was a tank. It swatted their strikes aside like flies. With skin hard as granite, Bjorn played the bait, while Einar went for a lethal backstab. Despite a perfect hit, her blade barely left a scratch. The demon turned and launched Einar across the room. She struggled up, leaning heavily on her blade, shouting that this monster's power was insane. Bjorn remembered this beast's broken defense and god-tier healing from the game. The death demon unleashed another terrifying roar. Bjorn's blood ran cold. He knew that stance, the beast was summoning its ghoul army. Dozens of ghouls swarmed them instantly. Einar, clear the trash! Bjorn roared. He locked onto the demon, shield raised, pressing forward with unwavering resolve. A brutal blow forced him back, but he pivoted and charged again, shield first. Einar ripped through the ghouls. Stay sharp, Bjorn barked, slamming his mace into the beast. The two barbarians synchronized their strikes, finally crushing the demon's skull. Victory felt close, but the demon tanked it and sent Bjorn flying with one strike. He hit the dirt hard. Gasping for air, he saw the gash on the monster's head. The wound knitted shut instantly. Bjorn racked his brain for a plan. Meanwhile, Einar seized the demon's leg, using raw strength to flip the massive creature. Before it could recover, the barbarians ended it, leaving behind a massive mana crystal. In the eyes of a barbarian, that loot was barely worth 100 crystals. With the ghoul remains, it was maybe 300. High risk, low payout. Einar lived for the hunt, and Bjorn realized she was actually a top-tier partner. Erwin had been way too passive. They kept spamming their trip and smash tactic on more demons. 70 kills later, Bjorn scoured the remains, desperate for a rare demon essence. Nothing dropped on day 1. By day 2, the demons started ganging up in pairs. They managed, but staying in one spot for too long was becoming a death sentence. Ghouls were closing in. By noon, the demons were spawning in groups of 3. The situation was spiraling when a new group of explorers suddenly appeared on the horizon. Einar didn't wait for introductions. She threatened them until the terrified scavengers ran for it. We need to move, she warned Bjorn. Humans know our spot now. They couldn't trust anyone. As they trekked on, Bjorn began to wonder, did she have a dark past with humans? They still needed a safe place to rest. A scream for help echoed out. They found a pile of dead adventurers soon after. Poison was everywhere. Before they could move, a lethal-looking plunderer blocked their path. She was high level. These scum didn't hunt monsters. They hunted other players for gold. Plundering carried a death sentence. But Bjorn knew silence was the only rule here. If they all died, no witness would remain. The woman smirked, enjoying the tension. First time meeting a professional? She teased. Bjorn stayed silent, calculating his odds. Her stance was perfect. She was clearly a pro, yet he'd never heard of her. Einar gripped her sword, her knuckles white. She leaned in and whispered to Bjorn. This one is built different, she warned. The dead explorers had 0 visible wounds. It was definitely poison. Bjorn asked if those corpses were her former teammates. She turned her back, admitting it casually, as if she'd just taken out the trash. She began looting their gear. Einar hesitated, wondering if they should start the brawl. Bjorn took one look at her power level and made the call. We run. They sprinted away before she could even blink. As they hauled it through the corridors, Bjorn followed his markers toward the exit, but 4 humans suddenly blocked their path. Einar was ready to swing, but Bjorn quickly explained they were being hunted. The group bought the story. Their leader stepped forward with a shady proposal. Help us kill her, and you get all the loot, he promised. He prepared his gnome ability to hide them all in a cloak of invisibility. Stay close, he urged. Bjorn and Einar stepped right into his 3-meter range. Sucker, the leader grinned. 2 barbarians in one trap. Then, paralysis hit Bjorn like a truck. Reality crashed down. It was a total setup. He had no clue how to escape their shackles. His thoughts raced, dissecting the bind. If they were truly frozen, what kind of sorcery was this? Then he realized it. The stone golem's curse. Their enemy had definitely devoured a high-rank monster core. Self-harm was the only escape. Meanwhile, the thugs laughed, calculating exactly how much barbarian loot was worth. One creep grabbed Einar's face, inspecting her like a trophy with a sickening, predatory smirk on his face. He bragged about their luck. A barbarian's heart was pure profit. Then he turned his blade toward Bjorn. The scavenger sneered, pulling a knife. You're finished. My eyes won't let a single prey slip away. He drove the steel toward Bjorn's throat, but Bjorn was ready. He braced for the impact of steel. As it bit in, he twisted, keeping the gash shallow. The sudden agony instantly shattered the magical paralysis. He exploded into motion before anyone blinked, burying a massive fist directly into the scavenger's smug face. The gang froze in terror. Bjorn ripped the blade from his neck and tossed it aside like garbage. It clattered near Einar. Despite his stance, Bjorn was bleeding out and his body was reaching its limit. His knees gave out, forcing him down. But Einar was free, her fingers tightening around her sword's hilt. She became a whirlwind of steel, carving through the scum with cold, ruthless, and terrifyingly efficient strikes. They dropped until only the leader remained. He turned tail, but Einar didn't even give him a look. She dove toward Bjorn, who was fading fast. Pure desperation bled into her voice as she screamed. She begged him to stay alive, swearing blood. Bjorn, barely conscious, reached out with his last bit of strength. He gestured for a potion, hovering near death. That experience boosted his mental fortitude by exactly 3 points. The elixir and his seal worked magic. Stitching his throat wound back together in a matter of seconds. Einar joked about his new scar, but Bjorn was already standing. He wanted to hunt that leader down. They tracked him down and cornered him quickly. But Bjorn didn't want blood. He wanted the man's talent. He planned to exploit his hiding skill. Suddenly, a poison dart whistled through the cold, dark forest air. It pierced the captive's throat. Dead. A red-haired plunderer stepped from the shadows, looking down at the body. She'd watched their whole fight. Bjorn didn't hesitate, screaming for Einar to launch a full-scale attack immediately. They charged together, 2 against 1, but the woman didn't move an inch. She remained eerily calm. She ghosted past Einar's blade and blocked Bjorn's strike with effortless, terrifying, and almost inhuman grace. How many essences did she have? Her raw strength was beyond anything the two had ever faced. Bjorn ditched his weapon, trying to pin her while yelling for Einar to find an opening and strike. Suddenly, his legs buckled. A dagger was buried in his side. He'd been hit without even seeing it. A dark realization hit him. If she used aura, they were dead. Einar tried a desperate backstab attack. The woman countered instantly. Paralyzing venom hit her, freezing the barbarian warrior mid-swing in an instant. Bjorn saw the truth. This woman was leagues above them. They were completely and utterly helpless. Her blade touched his face. She offered a deal. Swear you never saw me, and you'll live. She didn't want their blood. She claimed to owe the barbarians a debt from her own past. She wasn't lying. But Einar was furious, warning Bjorn that this woman was just a lying snake. Bjorn looked her in the eye. What happens if I refuse your offer right now? She didn't blink. You die. Bjorn finally nodded and swore the oath on his sacred barbarian honor. Amused, she noted he was different. She placed a strange enhancement on him before she turned to Einar. Then came Einar's turn. She spat a refusal. The woman's dagger rose, ready to finish her off. Bjorn begged Einar to swear. She argued about honor, but he reminded her of her promise to him. He told her to trust him. With a heavy heart, the female barbarian finally muttered the oath. Before she vanished, Bjorn asked her origin. She claimed to be from the 8th floor of the tower. They only survived because of her whim. Bjorn made a silent vow. Next time, he would win. They retreated to the 1st floor and stepped through the portal, finally returning to the surface world. Einar collapsed the moment they landed. Bjorn asked if she was okay. She barely managed to whisper. Bjorn dropped the cold truth. In this world, only predators survive. This wasn't the end, just a brutal lesson for next time. Einar swallowed the bitter pill of defeat, nursing a hunger for payback. For now, they were forced to catch their breath. Exhaustion screamed in Bjorn's bones, yet sleep remained elusive. He wasn't broken like Einar, but the weight of shame was suffocating. He couldn't shake the memories, the blonde stranger's rescue, the priestess's cold refusal, and that swordsman tossing him a lifeline in a bottle. He'd gulped it down like a desperate amateur. Every gory detail flashed back the exact second that head rolled from its shoulders. The pure insanity of this world proved one thing. He'd been playing defense. But the just surviving phase? That ended right now. This pathetic existence had to go. Locking eyes with Einar, he asked if she was truly ready to cross any line. No matter the risk, they needed power. Einar didn't blink. She knew the equation was simple. Evolve or end up as corpses. Bjorn laid out the master plan. Their new target? The Rift. They were going in deep to hunt down the case. First, they tore through the floor one mobs, carving a bloody path until the darkness finally swallowed them whole. Eventually, a massive stone monument emerged from the gloom, a grim tribute to the pioneers who first dared to map this hellhole. An inscription stared back at him, the exact phrase from the game. If the lore matched, then the secret trigger would, too. This rift was a classified secret. Einar swore her silence, but her mind was racing. What kind of madness were they uncovering? Bjorn described it as a nested nightmare, a labyrinth hidden inside the walls. But cracking it open on floor 1, that required high-tier loot, magic crystals from 4 floor 2 beasts, plus a rare rank 8 magic crystal as the key. The rift triggered a private dungeon built for 5. The catch? The difficulty would scale based on how many warriors stepped inside. In the original game, this rift didn't spawn for 3 months, but eventually, players figured out how to glitch it into reality. Bjorn triggered the seal, and the duo plunged headfirst into the